Well, this, he didn't know about this. The actual council meeting.
No, oh, for the council meeting? What was it, Johnson?
All right, let's see what we got here. It looks like he is ready for that. I think that it is the appropriate time.
Just left the room. Here she comes back. Okay.
All right, apparently we have a camera, so I'm going to assume that
We're taping.
Don is ready. We'll call the special meeting of October 21st. Mayor and City Council of the City of Lincoln Park to order. If everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if I could have roll call, please.
Councilpersons Breeding,
Present.
Higgins,
Present.
Kelsey,
Here.
Parkinson,
Here.
Ross,
Here.
Salcido,
Present.
and Mayor Carnes.
Here. All right, the purpose of this meeting is a special session, a study session to discuss park maintenance. And I think to lead things off, we'll have Dorian Christian, our Director of Parks and Recs, among other things.
Good evening. Dennis and I traversed all the parks over the last week, and we made a list of what we've seen as the major issues that need to be taken care of. Of course, number one on all of them is going to be mulch, but we have to make sure that the mulch that is put down is playground mulch, and playground mulch is, the last time I ordered it, it was 15.75 cents per yard. I did Quant Park, and I did 75 yards just for Quant alone. Because it is a special mulch, so the kids don't get the splinters and things like that. According to the state, you should have in a residential playground, and I'm going to say residential is going to be more like home use, is going to be 3 to 4 inches of mulch. Commercial, which I would consider us to be commercial, is 5 to 6 inches of mulch in the area.
You said, what was the price again?
15.75 cents, yes. Yeah, 15, yeah, so for the 75 units that I did, it was $1,181.25, plus $150 delivery fee. I did go out, I got the cheapest price available. And so, as I said, Quant Park cost me $1,331.25 total with delivery for 75 yards. I know it sounds harsh, but that's what it was. We did do it when James was here. I don't have the list of parks with me. I've been off on vacation, excuse me, on what we did do. But there was 4 parks. We did, I know, Youth Center up in the front, Council Point, and I I don't want to lie. I don't know what the other two parks were that we did with that mulch. And I know that James got it, and you would have to go back through payables to find out how much he did order and what he paid for it. Okay, so let's start off with Ford Field, which is at Buckingham and Ferris. It has 2 baseball diamonds on it. The one right off of Ferris we call Field 1. It has trees and vegetation along the fence line, and we're going to find that at almost every single park we go to. The vegetation and the trees that are growing up along the fence line need to be addressed because it's going to ruin all our fences more sooner than later. We need to break up the field, level it, and re-drag it. Field 1 needs a new pitcher's mound and just a little bit of fence work. Field 2 off of Wilson, 2 pipes need to be repaired on the backstop. Again, the field needs to be broke up, leveled, and re-dragged. A new pitcher's mound and the vegetation in that removed. They do use Ford Field for baseball. I think we're going to see a little bit more now that Hoover has lost their 2 fields, and they're going to be utilizing the fields that they weren't before more, I think. But I have always seen them practicing on Ford Field when I go up and down Ferris. The basketball court has some weeds on the court. And I think if we just get rid of the weeds and seal the joints, we're good there, so they don't come through again. It needs some new hoops and maybe nets. Dennis suggested instead of putting the cloth nets up to use the chain nets. I said if they're tearing down the cloth nets, they got a hoop. They don't need a net. But he said we have to put nets up. So that's where we went. The playground, that playground has pea gravel. It does not have mulch. So we'd have to redo the pea gravel. We're missing one baby swing. There's a little bit of graffiti on the slide, but we couldn't get into the restrooms. The keys did not work, so I have no clue what kind of shape, what's in there, if it's storage. I have no clue what's in the restrooms there. And that's all we found on Ford Field. Braverman Park, which is Detroit and Washington, was in very good shape, we thought. Just needed a little weed control around the fences and some mulch. And we were good to go with that one. We didn't see anything else in our travels on that one. Council Point Park, we started with the restrooms. The trim I know is being repaired. That's already been taken care of. We've seen one broken glass block, and I don't know how to explain it. It's a little square that only the outside of it's broken, not the inside. And it's right when you look at it off the parking lot, right like almost in the middle on the right. They have some yellow posts in the front that you don't know they're yellow anymore. They need to be repainted. The interior door to the supply room and the ladies' restroom needs to be repainted at one point in time. Somebody scratched something into it or whatever, but we need to freshen that up so you can't tell that what happened. The whole interior of the men's room needs to be repainted, and it needs a new mirror because it looks like the fun house. And it's, according to when the building was put in, we're going to need to put in down the line a new roof, because that's going to be coming up due to the age of the building, and I'd rather we think ahead and start putting money aside for it instead of waiting until it leaks. That way we'll have to spend less money. Ball field number 1, Dennis was saying, because when he was doing Parks and Rec stuff, they used to have to walk the outfields. And I had to have him explain that to me. But due to the fact that this used to be a landfill that was capped, he said debris will pop up through the landfill over the years. So you need to walk the outfield to make sure it's safe and there's nothing popping out of the outfields. He said the warning track needs to be dragged with new slag put in, and I guess that's when you are getting off the grass, hitting to that track before you know when you hit that track, you're going to be hitting the fence, so be careful. We need to remove the trees and vegetation along the fence line. And Dennis did take pictures, but I'm sorry to say he is in the hospital, so I don't have them. But they're actually, the trees are growing up through the backstops. It's to the point where, again, if we don't take care of it, get it cut down, we're just putting it out for bad because they're going to tear up the backstops completely. Right now, they haven't, but if we could get it taken care of before it goes much further, it's going to be better. Ball field number 2, again, we have to do the walking in the outfield, the warming track, and remove the vegetation. Along the walking track, there is a bench behind field number 2 on the south side of the creek that is very cockeyed. It needs to be reset properly because if it's not reset, it's going to be in the creek because they're going to get it out. We need to thin out the point, and where the historical sign used to be, it's missing. You do not know it's the point anymore, the way the vegetation has grown up around it. So our little historical area is not what it should be. There's graffiti on the drains, the parts we can see, because the creek is so high, only 2 of the drains we could see. The third one was underwater. We need a weed and tree removal extremely bad at the gate for the drains. There's a memorial bench that they had paid for Marion Mascato. She used to be working at the schools. And the seats, for some reason, we don't know if it is damage or sun, they are completely warped up, the 3 pieces of board that need to be replaced. And that's near the inline rink. We believe that you need 3 more benches along the walking area on either side and at the back of the inline rink, so that if somebody is walking the track and they do need to sit, there's a place to sit because there is nowhere right now. And joint sealant on the north side of the track, of the trail near the rink. And again, down the line, we think that with the track being in such good shape it's in, we need to reseal it so that if we reseal it, we'll keep it in the shape that it is in now instead of letting it get tore up. The inline rink is in very, very, very poor shape. All the puck boards need to be replaced, the kick plates, and the cap rail. The doors are broken. Fencing is broken and hanging. The benches on the south side of the rink are tore up. There was a lot of graffiti, and we did report that immediately to the DPS, who went out to take care of it for us because it was so bad. They did hit the cement, and I don't know if the DPS got to that or not. But we need to reset our parking blocks in the parking lot. We need to patch the parking lot, and the pump station was slightly tagged. I do have to say that Wayne County Sporting, who is doing our soccer program, they have done a marvelous job on our soccer fields. They themselves are cutting them. They themselves have put new nets up. That area is immaculate. They keep it up, and their players do too. And I have to give them a lot of points for that because it's not us, it's them. So I don't want to have us taking credit for something they're doing. We went to Lions Park. We're missing 1 swing. The handicap swing is missing the locking piece, and I had spoke to Bob Quilico about it. He said he was going to replace it, but I'm going to have to get back in touch with him because that hasn't been done. We have some dead trees that are just hanging out there that are going to be falling over shortly. Some of the trees that were planted look like bushes. All they need to do is be trimmed along the bottom and turned back into a tree to get again, and they'll be fine. The wall, again, I spoke with Bob Quilico and Cliff, and those 2 could not make their decision on they wanted to repair the wall, remove the wall. One wants one wants another. I think the council needs to kind of say, hey, we have to decide what we're going to do with this because it is becoming a dangerous situation with all those bricks falling. And it needs mulch, and the Lions Club says, you supply the people, we'll supply the mulch, and they'll even give us the landscaping that goes underneath it so that the weeds don't grow up. I have talked to the people who are doing our cleanup now, and they said come spring, they'll be more than happy to help us do that. We'll set it up and let it go. So we should be able to get that done this spring. Comes Kosminski Park at River Drive in LeBlanc. The parking lot does need to be graded. They had suggested, it's got one of those really old, teeny tiny pavilions that sooner or later you could remove that little tiny thing. That could fit maybe 1 or 2 chairs under it and put a bigger one up. The baby swings are completely gone. There's 4 of them that we have to replace. The white field fencing needs to be straightened. And on the restrooms, we couldn't get into the storage and or the men's room because they weren't working properly. We got into the women's restroom and they're very antiquated. They're not handicap accessible. It would be a great idea if somehow we could get one of those prefab buildings that you can get that have the restroom and the concession stand together. I want to get some pricing up together on that so I can give it to you guys on what it would cost to replace that building with something like that. They would like the pathway between the 2 fields. And what they're looking for is us to straighten out one of the fences and taking away like 5 feet of one of the fields so that people, when they have to go use the restroom, don't have to go all the way around the park. They said when grandparents come and you've got some handicapped people, that's really hard for them to get around, to get to the restrooms. And they're very fine. We have to get with the rest of the things, but the board was fine with it. They were the ones who made the suggestion of opening it up so that the people that come can get to a restaurant easier. What they were looking for, wish list, possibly supplying parking off of Wilson, right behind the field where you can get in off the alley, maybe getting some asphalt put in so that there's parking because there is no real parking when they have a game in that area. I did the restrooms. They were talking about adding pathways to the ball fields and restrooms. Again, they would like to see asphalt sooner or later where people could walk and get to the restrooms without going through a grassy, muddy area. And, well, Dennis added more to it, and he added the same stuff I did because we're back to the parking area in Wilson. Sorry about that. Then we're going to go to Prop Spinner Park. Prop Spinner Park was in very good shape. All we could see was we needed to level the parking lot and add a little bit of additional gravel. It was a little bit rocky when you went in the Jeep. I don't know. Dennis was going over everything with his Jeep, so got to the point I felt like I was on a roller coaster. But it felt like that in that parking lot in a couple areas, so we just need to add a little gravel and level that out. Maple Park, which is at St. John's and Hazel. We had put new basketball courts in there with CDBG money a while back. We need to touch up the paint on the court. It's showing a little wear and tear, and if we keep it maintained, I'm hoping that we keep the residents happy and keep the kids from making a mess of it. It does need some nets. We need some mulch in the park. The pavilion needs a new roof and some paint. The roof is starting to rot out in certain areas where if you're walking underneath it, you're going to see daylight right through the steel. I myself am not that to know what is going to be dangerous in that respect on how long it would last, but it is starting to rust out on the sides. There was just a little bit of graffiti, and I did give this list to the DPS so they can handle the graffiti areas for us. We've got a lot of fence area in that park that needs to be fixed, especially like near the Ecorse Creek line where the trees have fallen on it and broken the fence line completely down. I think as the city, we should get that fence line back up and put the poles back the way it belongs so that there's no issues that we don't have it blocked off. And just vegetation cleanup again along the fence lines. We went through Youth Center Park. Number one thing, remove the swimming pool. We would love to replace the wading pool with the splash pad and replace the wading pool restrooms with one of those prefab bathrooms. Again, I'm trying to get the company to send me some information on it because those can be built to specification. So you can have as many restrooms in it, you can have a concession stand in it, you can change it around. So I'm waiting for the salesman to get back with me because, of course, that's the way they want to do it. We need some joint repairs on the concrete drive. We need a little bit more benches by the playscape off of Dick's for when the parents are watching their children playing. We need a little bit of fence repair by the Dick's playscape. Pavilion number 1 has a hole in the center, and I guess that used to be a plaque by whoever donated it, but now it's a trip hazard. So we need to get some cement in that hole so nobody goes running through it and breaks their ankle. That would be me. We have pavilion number 1, we have a little bit of trim on the area facing Abbott coming off. I guess that's the easiest way I can say it. My back was to Abbott. You look at the pavilion, you could see where the trim is coming off, and we're gonna let the DPS know about that so somebody can at least put it up before it's ripped off, and repair it before it gets bad. There's graffiti on the cement. The grill is shot. We need a new grill there. Then we went to pavilion number 3. We went into the men's restroom. It needs new lighting. The lighting is atrocious, no mirror. And we need to paint that, and the dividers are rusting, so we need to sand and paint those before they get real bad and we have to replace them. The women's restroom, we need to replace and or paint the dividers because they're rusting. It needs paint in the bathroom and new lighting. Going down the side parking lot, I'm sure everybody who's been out there knows that the side parking lot needs to be recapped. It's in very bad shape. The parking blocks are nowhere near where they're supposed to be anymore. They're all over the place. So if nothing else, we need to reset those before somebody drives over it and hurts their car. Pavilion number 2 needs a new roof. And the inside concrete is buckling. So I have not been leasing that out at all. I don't want to rent out something that the cement is buckling underneath it. John was getting pricing on it. I don't know if he had got the pricing on getting the roof repaired or the cement, but he was working on that. We went to the basketball courts. It needs 8 backboards and hoops. There's a drainage issue, so when it rains, the water just stays there. So we have to check to see what the problem is, because I think there is a drain in there, but it might just be stopped up. It might not be opened up. It probably has had nothing done to it in a long time. And we need, Dennis is saying, just remove the old tennis nets and the poles because they're not being used at all. They're just hanging out there, and the basketball players run into them when they're playing, and that gets used a lot for basketball. It does need, of course, vegetation cleanup around it. Then we went to the Abbott Playscape. We have 4 swings missing, 1 tot swing missing. The mulch was only done at the Dick's end of it, so we need mulch at the Abbott end of it. There is no benches there at all for parents to sit at. And the single grill needs to be replaced because it's completely rusted out on the bottom. J.C. Park at Harrison and Ferris, of course, mulch. Needs 2 basketball nets. The equipment is fading. It just needs to be brought back up and repainted. As long as we use the playground paint and bring it back up, it'll look like brand new again. And the tree right by the sign needs to be trimmed because it's almost completely covering the sign. So we just need to trim that up so it shows again. Forest Park, Lord, I haven't been there since my daughter was a brownie. That's a long time ago. There was no sign. The hanging sign is completely gone. I know the DPS has had issues. We can't keep the fence locked because I believe it's the billboard company that just keeps cutting the lock, and we just keep replacing it, and they just keep cutting it off to get to the billboard. It does have a pavilion. The roof is getting bad. It needs to be painted. And we need to check to see if the electrical's still working on the pole. If it's not working, either fix it. If it can't be refixed, get rid of the electrical so it doesn't look like there is any electrical there. The path was so overgrown we couldn't access it. It was just that Dennis got a little bit back there with it, and I wasn't walking through that high weeds. There's no way. And Lord, no, I was in dress clothes, wasn't doing it. And so we stopped. We backed up and went the other way. We could not tell. He said the kids have built some really nice jump ramps and that for their bikes back there, but we don't know what's going on back there. And plus, he thinks there's a few tent cities back there, but again, we couldn't get back there, so we couldn't tell for sure. And the trees do need to be trimmed down. The trees behind the houses, there's one right when you're, like if you're driving out on the right-hand side, it's dead, and it's right at the fence line. It's right at somebody's garage. We need to get that removed. Because it's just it's right by the houses. That's just disaster waiting to happen. Again, we need the house fence line cleaned up. And we noticed that one house has a double gate that leads out from their backyard for a car park, where they're actually got stones back there where they're driving through the park to get into their backyard and park a car, which is, we'll have to let the building department know about it, because that's not really legal to be driving back there like that. Then we went out to Pond Park on Bailey and Dix. We need to remove the wading pool, the pump house, and restrooms. The pavilion is rusting through at the sides really bad. So a decision would have to be made. Do we want to repair, or just remove the pavilion too? We need to remove the trees and vegetation along the fence line. Along Dix, though, we don't know whose responsibility that would be, the cities and or the counties. Part of the poles are missing on the fence line in that. You could see that they're laying on the ground, so we don't know whose responsibility that is. Dennis and I weren't quite sure on that. Figured John would be able to let us know a little bit more on that. And then we have a missing sign. You can see where it was. It's just not there no more. And there's a nice double bike rack there that we need to figure out where's the best place to move that to be utilized, because right where it is, it's just sitting there. Nobody's using it. So why not put it in a better location so that it is utilized, whether it's the library, the community center, wherever. But it's in really good shape, so it's something we should move and get utilized. We were out to Marion Park where they did the cleanup. A little bit of graffiti, which I'm sure they took care of. We believe they need 1 or 2 benches out there. It's a play area, but there is no benches for the parents. The park sign is missing. And there's an old roadway that is right there that the cement's starting to collapse in. So we need to fill that, remove it and fill it with dirt where it's collapsing, and seed it so that somebody doesn't get hurt. I don't know what road it would be. That was, I think Dennis was saying there was a house there at one point in time, right there by Marion. Then we went to Memorial. Not a whole lot. We need to trim the trees up because we've got a lot of hanging dead wood that's falling off constantly on some of these trees. Mulch in the playground area. The ball field backstop, never used. Never used. We can remove that and get rid of it. It's rusty. It looks bad. It's an eyesore. It's never being used. We need by the bleachers where the kids play soccer, we need to replace a couple boards and paint them so they look good. New playscape would be nice. They got only the real old equipment there. So further down the line, if we can figure out a way to get a playscape there, it would be awesome. And we have to make a decision on what do we want done with the old tennis court. I know somebody came up to me about putting pickleball there. I don't know if we could because of the drainage. I don't know about the poles with the electrical. They tried to figure out if electrical was hot or not, and they didn't figure it out. That's when Don was here, so if he didn't know, I surely don't know. That wasn't turned down back to me. The parking lot behind us, the parking blocks, of course, are all jagged and need to be reset and put back in. And the band shell top itself, I know we had a renovation done and painted. It's starting to pit and peel. So we're going to have somebody take a look at it and see the stability of it, and if it can be repaired so that we can save something that the city's known for, which is their band shell. And the landscape, the tree area, I'm thinking in front of the building, we have such a problem with weeds and the mulch and trying to keep it up that it might be just better to take the mulch out, remove those blocks, and just put grass down. It would look nicer, we could seed it, and it would not get to be the meaty, weedy mess that people are looking at. And that would take, wouldn't take really that much to do. We need to replace those porch rails sooner or later. They are really rotting quite severely. And if a wish list, a new porch that's handicap accessible. The one that we've got there now really isn't handicap accessible. We make it that way with the ramp for deliveries, but that's not up to ADA standards for it. So that would be something that we could look into. And they are replacing the freeze board that's peeling really bad. And so that's going to be replaced where it's rotted and painted, and hopefully very shortly siding put on it, so we won't have to deal with that mess anymore. It'll be fixed and fixed properly. Exchange Park at Dixon McLean, the neighbors keep that up beautifully. We need a little bit of fence fabric repair, mulch, trim some tree branches over the benches because they're hanging so low it's getting in the way of people sitting. And there's a little bit of graffiti on the top of the playscape, but I have to give the neighbors a lot of credit because I know it's them that are keeping that area as nice as it is, being right there in a neighborhood. Quant Park, we need to clean all the field fence lines full of debris, trees, weeds growing up it. We need to replace the alley fence. The drinking fountain right in front of Holcomb Field, somebody's broke the lining for it, I believe. It's just a plastic line. Somebody's cut that, so it's not using anymore. The equipment boxes are completely starting to rot. They're rusty. That looks nasty. The south end of the parking lot at Alley has some very dangerous holes in it. And it was made out that it's when they removed the water and the cutoff from when they took down Sears. So I don't know if we can go back on the company that owned that plaza and had it demoed, if they should have to fix that and repair that area. Fence lines were tore down right there. They were there when the business was there. So I don't know if it's something we can go back on the business that tore down those businesses to fix what they broke, or if we're stuck fixing it. The parking lot, everybody knows, is atrocious. It's got a lot of holes, a lot of weeds. The center walking aisles are disintegrating. The pitching areas in the fields, you can't even tell that it is a pitching area because the weeds in there are like 3-4 foot tall. We need to replace the lights on the pavilion. If we can get the electrical service there and get the necessary lighting, security that we were hoping to get there, replacing those lights won't be a problem because they won't be breaking them out anymore to keep it dark, because we're going to have surveillance cameras there. I think all the parks need that. We need some brush removal. It looks like something fell down at the back end of the park, and it's just laying there. The bleachers need new boards and a coat of paint. Just make it look pretty. And the back fence of dugout is broken, and that's on the Mondin field. So that needs to be fixed up. Now that we've got our new ball field lights in, and they're working nice. As far as I know, I don't know if they've passed their inspection yet. I'll have to check with Mr. Myers on that. It's something that it would be nice if we can get more tender loving care done at that park to make it look like the way it should. Again, the rear parking lot fence line, we need to fix and replace some parking blocks, because they are either broken in half, non-existent, or sticking out where they shouldn't be. We went to Ford Motor Park, Seacott and the railroad track. It doesn't have a sign, so nobody knows it's there. The property line is to the power poles by the railroad tracks, and the grass company is not cutting there. So I believe we own all the way to, as far as we could tell, to the power poles, and that's where they should be cutting to, and they're not. The grass is very, very high there. We need to grade the parking lot, put in some new gravel, straighten some backstop fencing, clean the house fence lines. Most of them are pretty well done because the neighbors do them, but we got a few neighbors that don't do it. So it's on our side of the fence. We should get that cut down. There was a little bit of graffiti again on the playscape. It was mentioned that there's trash again out there. The trash cans are gone again. So I don't know if we want to keep our trash cans out in the parks, whether permitting a little bit longer so that there is trash cans for the people to use, so it doesn't get all over the parks. It's something that would be a decision made by the DPS. Okay, the weather's been like beautiful now, but it's going to get really nasty. So how long do we want to keep those trash cans out there? Dennis found a hole by the playscape. He went pretty far down. It's probably about a foot deep, and it's wide, so we need to put some dirt in there so if a child or an adult or a dog even is running across there, they don't end up in that little hole. It needs mulch. The cap for the pavilion is missing. So you have the sheet metal up there, and it should have a cap in between the two pieces where they meet. That is completely gone off the whole pavilion. Where it went, we don't know. We didn't see it in the park laying anywhere, so it's just gone. And there was a little bit of graffiti on the pad. The first field is in worse shape than the second field. And those fields really aren't used. So since the first field is in such bad repair, we were thinking just remove it. And the second field, you just need to fix the fence and fix the backstop a little bit, and it's backing up and running. All the bases are there, the pitcher's mound's there, and everything else. But the first field is in really disrepair. We went out to VFW. There's minor fence repair, mulch, missing one swing, and then we got that big ball field over to the right of it that's never used, hasn't been used in 15, 20 years. Council might think about maybe taking it down and checking to see if it's in our charter where we could maybe sell off a plot or two and get some houses built up in that area. It hasn't been used in at least 20 years. It's just sitting there. It's just dead space. It's a real big field. We'll still keep the play area. It's right there by the apartments. It had a little bit of caution tape up because we know it's not an electrical line, but we don't know if it's a cable line or a phone line that's down that we need to get taken care of, but that is a lot of wasted space out there. Willow, which is at Washington and Abbott, the parking lot is gravel and needs more gravel, and it needs to be leveled. It's a very small parking lot, but it's a very bad disrepair. We need mulch. There's graffiti. We need to replace a tot swing. Parking blocks, again, need to be reset. The basketball nets we need to replace. And we need to just paint the little pavilion and spruce it up. And that, I believe, or is it we got another page? That is the end of the report. Unless you have any questions.
Do you know what the scheduled maintenance is for the parks?
Maintenance is normally done by the DPS. John is on vacation, and Frank doesn't know, so, because he's new.
Okay.
So Dennis might have known what it was years ago, but we don't know how it is scheduled nowadays. I think it would be great to have, like, every spring, a big through all our parks, get them all spruced up, and then all we have to do is maintenance afterwards.
Through the chair.
Have you discussed the Parks and Rec Commission, the findings here?
We've gone through some of it. I didn't have it 100% done. We were told about it Tuesday. My Parks and Rec meeting was on Wednesday, so we went over a little bit of it with that I had done during the meeting. And it's like, we're gonna try to get like community cleanups with maybe putting a banner up saying like the second Saturday of every month, put a sign up. And not put a month, not put a date. Community park cleanup. And that way, when that second Saturday is gone, the next park we could move the sign to. And try to get the neighbors to do it, because I got calls from the neighbors around Maple Park when they were having some issue with graffiti and things like that, and we addressed it immediately, but they all said they would be willing to get a park cleanup in their neighborhood if we scheduled it. So I think if we could put a sign out there saying we're going to do this on a certain time and give them time to make plans to be there. Not just, they see us out there. I think we'll get more help on doing things like that.
Well, they had that Adopt a Park thing out, I think that was a couple of years ago. But when you went and visited each of these parks, it was not comprehensive by any stretch of the imagination, right? Were you there for just a couple minutes, or?
We went through the whole park. It took us 3 days. Because we did have other work, of course, we had to get done at the office. And it took us about, I would say we were at Council Point Park a good hour and a half. We went through the whole park. We went through the whole walking trail. We looked through the diamonds. We actually locked the gates up that were open when we went to the parks.
It would have been nice to have the DPS with you at that point, as you went through that, to have a couple questions answered. You mentioned that in Forest Park, you believe there was a tent city that was there?
Dennis thinks there's a tent city that's in Forest Park in the back. He said he knows there was one there before.
Okay, can we have that checked tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
You're gonna need somehow to get through the brush. Fair warning. It's that deep. So make sure you take something to cut it down to get back there. Because you're not gonna get your vehicle through it.
Okay, as we go through here, obviously, some of these are gonna be capital improvement items,
Mm-hmm.
and some of them are gonna be, and at some point, we're gonna need to get down, prioritize what is going to be needed to be done, and what currently can be done within our budget, and what we're gonna have to plan for in the future. So a list with the parks, I imagine, with the help of the Parks and Rec Commission, you could do part of that.
I was hoping we could do that. We're gonna have to get out there though, and like on the playgrounds, we need to measure like in rectangular squares, so that we can figure out how much mulch, what the square yardage is gonna be in each park, so that we can figure out how much mulch is actually needed to put it up to where it should be. And of course, Dennis and I did not have anything with us to measure at that point in time. And I don't think we'd ever get done if we were doing all that too. But that's something that's gonna have to be done so we know what we're ordering, how much we need of it. The Lions, of course, we figured that all out. And they said they will do $5,000 towards it. They said, do we want to pay for it? And then they reimburse us. I said, no, I think you can just buy it and have it dumped there and we'll take it from there. And that way it won't come out of our city coffers at all. And we'll just figure out the date and let them know. And he said they're willing to move forward with that immediately. They wanted it this fall, but fall's not a good time for the DPS.
With the Lions Park, I was there about a month ago. There were some metal items that were sticking out where a rail used to be.
That was put back.
Those were removed, and that's taken care of.
Yeah, in the one area where the piece was out, I let them know immediately when I seen that, when I was there, when I got a call on the, it's like this tube.
The metal things that were sticking out of that top part is what I was talking about.
Yeah, we got that done, and we got the metal, I guess you call it stake, where they had the fascia missing that you put around the thing. They fixed that, put it back. I found the piece, and I put it there, and I called the DPS, and Mike happened to be up at, going by, and I flagged him down. I said, get in there and fix it, and he did it immediately. It took him 2 seconds.
Councilman Higgins, you had.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, at Lions Park, you didn't mention there's a pavilion over there with no roof.
They're handling that.
So it is.
They are
coming.
putting a roof on. They've got permission through I don't know exactly the plans of it. They've been working with John Myers on it, but there is a roof going to be put on it.
So there's a plan.
There is a plan, it's just the same way as they put all those beautiful picnic tables up.
Okay, thank you. Why I was gathering information for this meeting, because I also went through all the parks and took a lot of pictures. If anybody on the council would like to see the pictures later. I went over and spoke with DPS at length about the subject, and they really have no cleanup plan. They have no man assigned to the parks at this time. At one time, and I'm sure Mr. Parkinson can verify this, that we had 2 people who were assigned to the Parks and Recreation from DPS to take care of the parks. A lot of what needs to be done in the parks, because a lot of it is cleanliness and a lot of it is graffiti and a lot of it is just stuff that one man can handle or 2 men can handle. We really need to have 1 man assigned back to the Parks Department to start taking care of these things. This is the first thing people see when they come to our city. And if you're looking, especially if you have a family and you're wanting to move to the town, you look at our parks. And at one time, our parks were the shining example of our city that people came to see. And it's just not true anymore. And I don't want to make it sound any worse than it is, but it is horrible. And we need to do something about it. And that first part is, I believe, getting a man assigned, at least 1 man for now, for budgetary reasons. Maybe we can't afford 2 right away, but it's time to start putting some people back. 1 person at least assigned to these positions. 1 man alone can do weed trimming, can do graffiti, can put basketball hoops up, can put chains on, can straighten up a lot of fence posts. 1 man can do a lot of that. The second thing is, and she spoke to it earlier, and I'm going to bring it back up again. It has come time in our city to realize we need to start putting cameras in our parks, because as soon as we do something, and the people who did the great cleanup over Ford Park will tell you, as soon as they were done, they walked out and there's graffiti the next day. We need to have cameras in our parks. And again, I realize we can't afford to put cameras in all our parks immediately, but we need to start looking at our major parks and start building it up. And I believe we have a person who has volunteered to help us at least get this launched in one of the parks. And later on tonight, I will be asking for an update on that. But these are the things that I think we need to be looking at and looking at very seriously about our parks.
Councilman Parkinson,
Yes. There was about 6 of us in the Parks Department at one time, but that included CETA grant people. And there was 2 that cut the grass all the time, except for summer when it was just slow growing. And we did all the maintenance as needed. And every now and then, somebody noticed something, we get a write-up on it. But the pavilions at one time, the roofs were all rotten out. I found a company that donated metal roofing, so you might want to talk to me before you leave, because I still know the people over there, and I can put you in contact with them. But I also went to every park with my daughter, and we went through every park. We noted what was wrong, took pictures, and she had a map that she colored in. It's on Facebook. It shows where all the parks are at by the red coloring. And just the little things, like we went to the store and we came back, and I bought a pair of loppers. We went by J.C. Park, and it was small brush growing up through the trees. And we stopped there, and she got out and she just trimmed them all off, threw them in the back of my truck. We went to the dumpster, put them in the dumpster. Simple, 5 minutes, and cleaned that park right up. So anybody that's got 5 or 10 minutes, just walk across the street and just do a little something, because a little bit of something's better than nothing. Thank you.
anyone else?
It's got a comment, I guess, is that right now the DPS is doing the DDA area. If we get a DDA member, we can free up somebody that would be able to be 1 more person for the issue of the DPS. So we're talking about manpower. We need to look at what we're actually having DPS do now that traditionally they hadn't done in the past. And that's maybe goes back to the issue of the cameras. I know when the chief was here and we had the restrooms broken into over at Youth Center Park and they were damaged, the porcelain and all that stuff was tore up. We talked about putting a camera in there, and the chief said he was going to try to get one of those doorbell cameras, but there was no Wi-Fi over there. So I agree with Councilman Higgins, is that if we're going to do something, we need to put up the cameras. But we're also going to have problems after. It's not as simple as that. We have people that hang out there at nights. We have people to do graffiti. So you need to support the goals with the cameras. You need the people to be watching the cameras, notifying somebody, and you need the police or something to be able to go over there. Otherwise, that's not going to work. And I'm all for it, but it's a comprehensive proposal we're talking about. It has to work to make sure that if we put it in place, it has a support to make sure it works. That's all I'm saying. But if we do that, I think we need to start maybe at one park and work our way through. But the issue is, I think for a long time, if I remember, Councilman Candace was talking about, there was no money put into the parks, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct, Doreen?
Yeah, there's
For a
many,
long
many,
time, there
many
was no
years.
money
there was
assessed to,
nothing.
there was no money out of the budget for the park, so it got no money. So it's been neglected for quite a period of
Yeah,
time.
we're picking up neglect
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
not just a year.
No,
It's
that's
quite a
what I-
few years.
That's what I was getting at, so. But, you know, volunteers help out, but we still need to have the issue where we kind of like maintain it somehow in our process. And the volunteers are a bonus. That helps out even better. We can get more done, but that's just my comments. We're gonna do it, let's do it the right way, that's all.
And through the chair, I want to add to what I said before.
Is there anyone else that wants to make, because we have 5 minutes left, so I'll come back to you, sir.
It's just a quick question, Doreen. In regards to the mulch, I know you mentioned by the playground area you have a special one, but what about like for a tree near the sidewalk where the kids don't play? Do you use the same or?
We don't necessarily, that's not something we've done in the city of Lincoln Park, is mulch around the trees,
Just around the playground?
just around the
All right.
play area.
Thank you.
You were talking about Ford Motor Park.
Hold on 1 second. Ms. Ross, do you have anything for this?
No,
Okay, then go ahead.
You're talking about Ford Motor Park, they needed to cut that along the fence line. I agree, and also by prop spinners back behind the dumpster area, that's ours too. John Kazoo knocked that down for me and Councilman Kelsey a couple years ago, and the contractor was supposed to start cutting that area. Well, if you look back there now, it's a worse jungle than it was before. So I think that should be taken care of also.
Your Honor.
Now, you said that was prop spinner
Yes,
by the dumpster, okay.
yeah, behind the dumpster.
If we're talking wish list, and you brought Prop Spinner back up, which reminded me, Prop Spinner Park does not have nearly the parking that it needs if we're gonna allow the rails to keep having their games over there. The junior rails have done a magnificent job taking care of that park, and they do a magnificent job, you know, maintaining what they have. But when they host a game, I'm sure the people living down the street are wondering what to do because there's just way too much parking, not enough parking for them over there. That would have to be addressed. The other thing, I'm gonna say this, it was an embarrassment for anybody. We had a new event this year. We had a carnival over at Gregory Park, and the grass was so high, it was an embarrassment to the city. The band shell this year, I'm sorry, it looked like an abandoned building. If that had been any other building in the city, our city would have been over there giving it a ticket. It is past time that we can sit back and let this go on any farther. We have to act.
Is there anything further? Then, being no further discussion, the study session is adjourned at, we'll say, 7:24. We'll do it that way.
Here,